morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's episode of Red Light Sports Rant. I am Evan Witallison and joined by Troy Otradovic as he is not only co-hosting the show today, but also, tied up in, some personal matters as well. So he, he's here to join me, but, he may have to, give his attention elsewhere every now and then during the show. Are you there, Troy?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just buying a car.
Yeah.
It's just buying a car today.
Your attention might have to go elsewhere every now and then, which we completely understand. So I appreciate you being able to join, even though you're going through the process of buying a car. I know how much of a hassle that can be. So.
Yeah, well, we were talking. I got to either put the money in the inspection or buy a new one. So figured, what the heck? It's a nice rainy day, and I figured I'd go ahead and buy a new car.
Yeah, I didn't send the rain your direction we had yesterday, did I?
Yeah, bud, sorry. Got to hand off keys and get stuff done.
So I didn't send the rain your direction, did I?
Yeah, well, it's not freezing rain. It's in the 40s or 50s today, so it's not too bad out here in Pennsylvania. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of chilly here, and we had an ice skating rink in most of Wisconsin yesterday, so hopefully that thaws out and doesn't freeze again. So, but anyways, what car are you getting today? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm thinking I'm going to buy a Mercury Milan. So.
Oh, that's a very nice car.
Yeah, it's a nice car, but let's get into it, bud. And I know you want to talk about Ted Thompson, so let's get into that.
Okay. Well, before I get into that, just that we mentioned it yesterday as it possibly going to happen. They're just finalizing a contract, but James Franklin did take the head football coaching job at Penn State today, and a little unknown fact about him is that he was a Packer coach at one point. He was the wide receivers coach back in 2005. So I didn't know that he did have ties to Green Bay. Now, just to get into the Red Light Sports Rant, and Troy and I had Rob on the show earlier this week, and we talked about Packers going forward. And earlier this week, I read an article on Bleacher Report written by Zach Cruz, talking about how Ted Thompson has failed to restock the defense since the 2010 season. And before I go into my rant about him and why he's responsible for the state of the defense, I do want to say I do still support Ted Thompson, and I think he has done marvelous work during the 9 seasons he has spent in Green Bay. And it is hard to believe it's been 9 seasons already. But you look back at the 2010 season, Packers won the Super Bowl that year. Packers, even with all the injuries that they had, they still had won the Super Bowl. But since then, as we all know, starting in 2011, the defense had really taken a huge fall since then. And there's a few reasons why I put the blame on him. If you look at that 2010 Packer roster, look at the defense. You had, in the Super Bowl, the starting roster, the roster in the Super Bowl, you had Howard Green, Colin Jenkins, Ryan Pickett, B.J. Raji, C.J. Wilson, and Jarius Wynn, a defensive line. Out of that group, you've lost Wynn, but importantly, you've lost Howard Green and you've lost Colin Jenkins. And the Packers still to this day, in my opinion, hasn't successfully replaced Colin Jenkins in that defense. And you look at the defense, they've lost Desmond Bishop. I'll plus on the defense linebackers, they've lost Desmond Bishop, and they've lost Nick Collins. 2 other positions they've failed to adequately fill to replace those guys. And he still hasn't found a component opposite Clay Matthews. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, Troy, but when we had Rob on the show, he said that he had talked to Capers when he first got to Green Bay and was asking Capers what he needed in order to fully install his 3-4 defense. And I remember him saying he needed a shutdown corner, which he had in Charles Woodson. He needed a playmaking linebacker, which they got in Clay Matthews, and they needed a big run-stuffing nose tackle, which they had that year in B.J. Raji / Ryan Pickett, which Raji has fallen off completely. And you look at Thompson's drafts, and well, I get he's not going to go out and sign a lot of free agents. But if you look at Ted Thompson's drafts going back to 2010, that year they drafted Brian Bulaga, Mike Neal, Morgan Burnett, Andrew Corliss, Marshall Newhouse, James Starks, and C.J. Wilson. Mike Neal's been very injury-prone off and on, plus now they switched to the linebacker. Morgan Burnett's been a big disappointment this year after getting that new contract that he had. 2011, and looking at this draft just sickens me. That draft we did get Randall Cobb, which is awesome. He's been a huge contributor to this team, but Derek Sherrod has been very injury-prone. Alex Green is no longer on the team. Devon House has been more potential than playmaker. He has to start living up to that. DJ Williams is no longer on the team. Their 6th-round pick, Caleb Shandaroff, guard, is no longer on the team. DJ Smith is no longer on the team. Ricky Elmore, linebacker, which had very good size, 6'5", 255. He didn't even make it out of training camp. Ryan Taylor's been a serviceable tight end, and Lawrence Guy is no longer on the team. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys from that 2011 draft that are no longer on the team. And then the 2012 draft, where they stuck to defense that entire draft, they drafted Nick Perry, who even said before the draft he would prefer a defense where he has his hand in the dirt, but they drafted him anyways. Jarrell Worthy, who's an undersized defensive end in the 3-4, he'll be a better 4-3 defensive tackle. They drafted Casey Hayward, who battled injuries this year. They drafted Mike Daniels, who's been a very pleasant surprise in the defense, but he isn't a starter in the 3-4. He's smaller than Jarrell Worthy, and Jarrell Worthy's too small for a 3-4 defense. Jerron McMillan is no longer on the team. Terrell Manning's no longer on the team. Andrew Datsko's no longer on the team. And B.J. Coleman's no longer on the team. So as much good as Ted Thompson has done for the Packers, he has swung and missed quite a bit these past few drafts. And it's really hitting the team big time right now. And the jury's still out on this company, this draft that he just had. Eddie Lacy excelled. David Bakhtiari excelled. Micah Hyde excelled, and Josh Boyd showed some potential later on in the year, but Dayton Jones didn't do much. J.C. Treader was hurt all year. Jonathan Franklin, before he got hurt, was very up and down. Nate Palmer was serviceable, but he's nothing special. Charles Johnson, Ken Dorky are no longer on the team, and Sam Barrington, I believe, was just the practice squad linebacker this year. So, all in all, going back to the 2010 season, Thompson has had to try to replace Nick Collins from 2011 and Colin Jenkins, and if you look at it, he hasn't done it. So I put a lot of the blame on him, as we've done in an earlier ramble as well, and we talked a little bit on Thursday's show, but I put a lot of the blame on him for the state that the defense is in, and he needs to hit some home runs in this year's draft and possibly free agency to shore up some of those holes. What's your assessment on the job Ted Thompson has done over the past few years, Charles?
Well, Evan, you talked about a lot of players on that list, and going back to the draft, one of the good things the Packers always used to do is they could find those gems in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. They could find those players that could come in, could step up, become all-pro players. And I think you hit it on the head. Ted said that when he came in as defensive coordinator, he needed his nose tackle. Well, we got our nose tackle in B.J. Raji, but we also didn't draft anything to go behind him. We lost Colin Jenkins. We also needed another playmaker, which is Nick Collins, and we've not replaced him since he's had that neck injury. We tried in the draft. Burnett just signed that big deal, has not fulfilled that potential. The big thing that I see with Ted Thompson right now, the problem is that we're missing in those middle rounds. The Green Bay Packers always used to be good drafting rounds 3 through 6, finding those players that could come in and really make an impact. And right now, we're not even getting the full production out of our first-round draft picks. I'm going to go back to A.J. Hawk. I love A.J. Hawk, but he's a top 10 draft pick. And his play is very solid, good player. But when you pick somebody in the top 10, you're pretty much expecting to have a guy that can be a game changer. And right now, A.J. Hawk is a good, solid linebacker, but he's not a playmaker. You know, he's not going to change the outcome of a game. And so when I look at Ted Thompson over the last couple of years, I'm just seeing that something is going on in our draft strategy. And again, it's one thing I had mentioned to you. Are we developing the players at the right speed? And if that's the case, where's this development issue coming from? Is it the assistant position coaches? I don't know. You know, is it the quality of player we're drafting? It could be. The last thing I'll say about Ted Thompson is that we had discussed about the 3-4 defense. Why is he not drafting players that fit the 3-4 defensive mold? Are we just drafting skilled players and hoping that we can move them into a 3-4 scheme, or do we want to go out and actually draft players that can play in the system immediately? That might be part of the problem. What do you think about that, Evan?
I think that could be a huge part of the problem. Is I think Thompson's more concerned with drafting these, you know, versatile guys, you know, guys that can be good at lots of things, that he doesn't draft guys that can be good at one or two things. He wants a guy that, you know, take Brad Jones, for instance. He can play middle, he can play outside linebacker, offensive line, he's done it. He drafts offensive linemen that can play guard, center, tackle, if they need to in a pinch, which has been a help, you know, last couple of seasons with all the injuries. And he drafts defensive linemen that can go inside linebacker, inside, outside. And I think that could be part of it. You know, he's just drafting versatile guys who don't necessarily fit the scheme, but can do a lot of different things okay, but nothing really well. And one team I want to point to, and I know they didn't have the best season this year, and they're a team, you know, in your backyard, the Pittsburgh Steelers. You look at the Steelers, when they're drafting guys to run their 3-4, they're drafting guys that fit their 3-4, and they're signing guys that fit their 3-4. And, yeah, they've missed a lot lately on some different drafts, but you look at their defensive linemen, you know, they have Ziggy Hood, who goes 6'3", 300, which 6'3" is a little on the short side. But on top of that, you have Brett Kessel, the beard, as you know, I like to refer him to, because he's got that crazy beard, 6'5", 285. Where on the Packers roster do they have that defensive end that's 6'5"? You know, Dayton Jones is close at 6'4", but he being a young guy, you know, the difference between Kessel and Jones, Kessel's 35. Dayton Jones is like 22. You know, so Kessel's been in the league for a while, and he's learned the scheme inside and out. And with all the young guys, that's what they're lacking within the system, within the scheme. You know, they draft a guy, they let them develop on the bench and have them in, you know, some different situation of football. And then as the veterans get older, they let the veterans go and they move them into there. But the Packers are not only drafting guys that can do multiple things, but they're not getting veterans in there to help teach the ropes. And that's one thing I do hope to see this offseason. I know I kind of went off a little bit of what you even asked and kind of went on my own tangent, but I do apologize.
So, no, I think that leads into another good point, Evan. You know, if we're not going to draft people to fit into the system, then what good is the system? I mean, we have to draft the right players to go into the system. And I think you're absolutely right. Living in Pittsburgh, I hear sports talk radio Pittsburgh all the time. And, yeah, they're down. The defense is old. The defense is slow. Got to make some changes. But they've got some young guys that they can put in there. And even though that defense was supposedly terrible this year, I mean, they still did pretty well for having players, no real superstar players, no real all-pro players. They ran the system well. And I'll tell you what, you can have, like Capers had said, he only needs 2 or 3 impact players, and then he could find the other 8 to mesh within the system. But right now, we don't even have those 2 or 3 playmakers to help that system because people are either having to learn a new system, and it's taking too long, or they have to get developed into the system, which again is taking too long. And then one of our starters gets hurt, and they're thrust onto the field not knowing what the hell they're doing. And so at that point, that is where our problems are coming from, because then that's where we sit there and go, well, you're late to the assignment. You're not good in gap responsibility. Well, the problem is we're trying to teach a new system, and these guys don't fit the system, and they're not used to it. So, yes, I put a lot of blame on Ted Thompson in the draft, and that leads me into the next point where he's got to get off his butt and get out in free agency and make some signings. He doesn't have to break the bank. He doesn't have to go spend $12 million on a player 32 years old. But he can go out and get what I call those B-tier players, the A- players, the B+ players. There are plenty of them out there that can fit really well into a 3-4 system. And that's what I think Ted Thompson has to do. And I think that's where Aaron Rodgers was going earlier with his comment. You have to get off your butt and get us some players that know how to play within the system. What do you think about that, Evan?
I agree 100%. And you brought up free agency, and Yahoo Sports put a list out of the upcoming free agents this coming year who are out there. And there's a long list of guys that can probably, be had at a good deal that can really help the team in lots of ways, like Tyson Jackson, who, hasn't been anything special per se in regards to production, but he has played, I believe, in Kansas City's 3-4 defense for a number of years. He's 6'4". He's got good length. He is 296 pounds, got good size, and he got overpicked. He got drafted the 3rd pick overall in the 2009 draft as a 3-4 defensive end. But I think he could bring something to the team, and he's got experience running the 3-4. And he's someone that can probably at this point come really cheap. That's just one example right there. You have Anthony Spencer, who's going to be a free agent from the Cowboys, who can play outside linebacker in the 3-4. That's what he was doing in Dallas before they decided to go to the 4-3. He may come with a little bit more money, but he did not have a good year in 2003 at all. Well, he was injured. He only played in 1 game. But he could be a good key piece to the defense, and he's still relatively young. He was drafted in the 2007 draft, first round, 26 overall. He's a free agent. That's two positions right there. A position opposite Clay Matthews that need help, and the defensive line where they need help. And I'm not saying they'll, solve all the problems, but those are just 2 names that are out there. And nose tackle, there's a few guys out there that could be interesting signs. Outside linebacker, O'Brien Schofield. He plays for the Seattle Seahawks, former University of Wisconsin defensive end, who he's developed into a solid player this season for the Seahawks. He suffered some injuries early on in his career, but overall he could bring something to the table. So there are free agents out there that could help at all different positions. And I think Thompson has to look at filling some of these holes in defense from free agency. You have Jarius Byrd, who's a free agent. He's going to cost some money, but he's a possibility. Malcolm Jenkins could be a fit to help out at safety. Dante Whitner, big hitting safety, something that the Packers have been lacking for quite some time. So there's a lot of guys out there, if Ted Thompson wants to dig into the free agent market a little bit, that can come at a pretty decent cost if he truly wanted to go out there. And Brian Schofield that I brought up, he's just 26 years of age, and he has a lot of football up in his tank, and he could probably come at the cheap. So those are just some names out there that if Thompson really wanted to look at some free agents that could fill holes on this defense and allow some of the younger guys to develop. I just named you some out there who are even still relatively young.
Yeah, I agree with you, Evan. I think there's going to be a number of free agents this year that can actually be available for the Packers, and you had mentioned a couple of them. And so, I've really got to take a look at this offseason to see what Ted Thompson is going to do. I mean, is it going to be another, hey, we're going to go through the draft, and we're going to build through the draft, which is great, but we haven't done it in the last 2 years. We have not got that player that can step in and do it, and then you look back at the draft, and I'm still going back, and I'm still I'm not totally disappointed in the Burnett contract because, when he got the contract, his play warranted that contract. But ever since he got that contract, he's not worth the contract. So
yeah, that's why I'm concerned about giving Sam Shields that money.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The thing is, though, you look at the way Sam Shields played this year, he's going to get that $9 million paycheck.
Yeah, so Rob nailed it right on the head, I think, is you got to be concerned with him paid, and he's someone that's had to basically fight his entire career for everything he has, and now he gets paid. How is he going to react to getting paid? And Rob brought up two Packer players who Mike Sherman signed, who I'm not going to mention names because he said it gives you something, acid reflux or something like that when you hear those names. Two guys that they gave a big contract to that, failed after getting the contract. And then look at Albert Hainsworth, and once Hainsworth got paid too, he stunk it up to high heaven. So that's just one concern I have.
Well, you always have a concern, Evan, when the big payday comes. I mean, and you're exactly right. I mean, it gives us indigestion, the acid reflux, all those things that we're talking about because, we're trying to win Super Bowls. And these guys are getting their payday, and then all of a sudden it's like they decide that they don't want to put in all the work. They don't want to go out there and do all the extra film study. They want, and I'm not saying for all players, but you just look at it. How many busts have there been when the big contract comes out compared to those that are truly valued in those big contracts? I think it's a minority at this point. And the other, the one thing when you look at it is when you invest that type of money, you're expecting that Pro Bowl play game in and game out. Everybody's warranted to have a bad game. But you know what? They have to have a very consistent level of play. And so I'm going to go back and say, I'm kind of glad B.J. Raji didn't get his big contract extension because the way he played this year, he does not warrant $8 million a year right now.
No, he did not. No, he does not. No, he did not.
So with that said, Evan, it looks like we're on the same page here. Ted Thompson really needs to maybe evaluate what he's doing and look at how is he approaching this draft. Is he drafting for a need in a system defensively, or is he drafting quality players? And if he's drafting quality players and he thinks he is, then he really needs to evaluate his assistant coaches. Are they developing these players to switch into the 3-4 defense? To me, honestly, when you look at it, it seems like a bunch of confusion, Evan. I'm not sure if they really know which way they want to go on defense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that they don't really know for sure they want to go on defense. And what I want to know is why doesn't Dom Capers, is he not in on the conversations of what he needs on defense? Does Ted Thompson not ask him? Does Mike McCarthy not ask him? But yeah, that's definitely interesting. We have some breaking news actually developing right now. I'm trying to find the, see if it is official per se, but a couple people that are tweeting it out are people that I have a lot of trust in. But it sounds like Alex Rodriguez is going to be suspended for 162 games in the 2014 season. It looks like the arbitrator is making his ruling. Either has already made it or is going to be making it very soon today. I've seen a few people tweet it out, guys that I do trust their information, but I haven't seen it I haven't seen it from like guys like TJ Quinn, who have been following the Biogenesis story from the start. But it looks like Alex Rodriguez will be suspended 162 games, so he'll miss the 2014 season.
Oh, poor A-Rod. Poor A-Rod.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was innocent to the end of the trail. I have no remorse for that, Evan.
I don't either.
Whatsoever. The way that he handled it. I mean, people can go off, and I mean, I know this is the Saturday rant, and people can go off about Braun and all his things, but you know what? Braun did lie, then he fessed up, and however you want to take that story. But again, it was another player, Alex Rodriguez. I'm innocent. Well, you go to an arbitrator and you're going to get 162 games. There's something there that tells me you're not innocent. So whatever you want to do, it is what it is. People's perception will be their perception. 162 games is what it looks like. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me, but I'm wondering. I don't know how accepting of it Rodriguez is going to be, because he was one that was talking about taking it to federal court if they held the suspension. So we'll see where he goes from there. But hopefully he just takes it and sits out the year and tries for one last historic comeback. And I believe he'll be 39 or 40 for the 2015 season. So let's see if he can do it at 40 years old, I guess. So we have about 255 left in the show, and we just, we spent most of it talking about Ted Thompson. We didn't even get a chance to check to see, what you're ranting on this morning. So I guess, do you have anything that you're just kind of ranting on this morning a little bit?
No, I was all cool with you ranting about Ted Thompson. That's been my biggest peeve with this season. The way the season has gone, injuries, and we talk about, hey, this season was looking like 2010 all over again. No gaps with injuries. But I'll tell you what, as the season went on and I saw that these younger players were not developing, that's where my rant came from. Ted Thompson needs to do a better job, and he better go out and get some free agents. Because if we're going to do it through the draft again, I have a feeling that we're going to have just a shell of a defense next year. We're going to have the offense. I'm not worried about the offense. But defensively, I am worried if we don't have the right players in there. And we need some leaders. Not necessarily playmakers, Evan. I think we need leaders. Leaders make people play better and play within the system. And that's what Ted Thompson has to go out and do in free agency. So that's all I have to rant about, bud.
Yeah, and, as I said before I even started, the disclaimer, and we have about 90 seconds left thanks to our lovely studio assistant that keeps, interrupting us, and sometimes, I swear she's on something every now and then, and she just, flip out as she did yesterday, which was quite an entertaining rant, listening back on it. But, Thompson, I do still support him. He deserves to start getting some of the blame that is being all levied at Mike McCarthy and Don Capers. Thompson deserves a lot of the blame, because Thompson, as well as he's done on the skilled positions on offense, and he's done okay on the offensive line, he just had a lot of bad luck with injuries there. He's swung and missed a lot on defense, and that needs to change. So do you have any closing remarks? We got about 35 seconds left.
No, just enjoy the day, everyone. My pleasure to rant with you, Evan. I love talking Packers with you. So with that said, I have nothing else today.
Okay, and, we'll be back on Monday. I'm going to have to discuss exactly what we're going to be talking about on Monday. But with that said, we will catch you at the next red light. Have a good day, everybody.